Hey, if you do another book about your time with the CPL, are you going to call it Bowling at the Death in Paradise? Because I think that would be a great title.
That's definitely, Death Bowling in Paradise. That's what it'd have to be, wouldn't it?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the One Stump Shot podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob McGregor, and I am delighted to be joined by writer and broadcaster Peter Miller today. Peter, hi, how are you?
Hello, Rob. As I said before we started this podcast, there's better guests, but I'm very honoured that you chose me. So delighted to be here, looking forward to it. It's a Friday night. I'm halfway through my fourth beer. Let's get this done.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Friday night, the County Championship campaign 2019 begins next week. It'll already be underway by this time next week. We're going to focus on Division 1 in this episode. We'll split it up and do Division 2 on the next episode, although we are recording it back-to-back. Bit of wizardry behind the scenes in the editing booth to split it. But Division 1 is our first topic, and I'll be honest, if we focus on who the favourites are to lift the trophy come September time, I'm leaning towards seeing the same team this year as last year, and that would be Surrey.
Of course they're going to win it.
Yeah.
Of course they are. I mean, they were amazing last year, and they had a ridiculously good team, and then they've just casually added Liam Plunkett and Jordan Clark.
Yeah.
Because why not?
Why wouldn't you do that?
Because what you needed to add to that amazing seam bowling attack was just two gun seamers that have been bossing it in county cricket for years. They're ridiculous. I mean, the only concern you've got from last year is I would suspect Rory Burns and Ollie Pope will both be playing for England for the majority of the summer during the test matches. Ollie Pope just casually banged out a 250 over in Dubai, didn't he, in the championship?
Yeah, as
you do. Start the season off that way. And then, as well, of course, is this young lad, Jamie Smith, who was keeping for them, wasn't he, in that game? And he scored 100 on first-class debut. Interestingly, do you know who else, another England prospect who made his first-class debut in one of those games was Ben Stokes back in 2010.
I didn't realise that was his debut. Yeah.
I
suppose it makes sense, but yeah.
It might have been 2009, but it was, his debut was in the MCC versus Durham game, back before Durham were terrible, and they have been woeful for the last couple of years. And I know there's a few circumstances around it, but I think there's some other bits and pieces kicking around. But that's a Division 2 conversation, so we should just concentrate just on the 8 teams in Division 1. I think Essex with Cook for a big, for the whole season, will do well. I mean, he's already scored a first-class 100 against, was it against Cambridge?
Cambridge,
I think
yes.
Wasn't it? Yeah. So he's already scoring runs. There's kind of a part of my heart, Rob, that just thinks maybe England lose in one of the first 2 tests and they don't have a single opener that's doing well and his country needs him.
Oh, God.
Strolls out to the crease to bat again.
Yeah.
So, look, batting in a test match in the Ashes.
You're not the first person I've seen mention this either.
It's just, I mean, granted he wasn't having the results that he had, but he's still done in comparison with every other, if you were to compare him with every other opening option that England have, right? Yeah. Obviously still the best one. And also, he's 34?
Right, yeah.
So I think the official campaign for him to be the leading run scorer of all time in Test cricket is #Catchin Sachin, I believe. Official title.
Yep.
And I haven't quite given up on the dream yet, because that day when it happened would be the best day on cricket Twitter ever.
Oh God, that would be full meltdown in your timeline. Because I've seen your timeline when you joke about it, let alone when it actually happens.
Just that tweet that says it's official, Alistair Cook's the greatest Test batsman of all time.
Yeah, and it's indisputable at that point.
Indisputable. I mean, the facts are facts. No, I mean, I suspect it won't happen, but there's still part of me. But they've got a very, very strong side, and obviously won it in 2017, and are still a very, very strong unit, and they've added to that unit, which I think is to their credit. I mean, they've let a few guys go, haven't they? But they've not been massive guys. Asher Zady's been released, hasn't he? And Callum Taylor and stuff. James Foster retiring, obviously a big loss.
But then they've already got a ready-made replacement in Wheater, so they're
they do.
Almost no shits given. Almost because he's been Foster was a phenomenal servant of Essex cricket, but they went out and got Wheater a couple of years ago. It's just like, hey, he's not going to play. It's kind of like Notts with Chris Reed and Tom Moores. It's like, this guy's not going to play forever. Let's get somebody ready, and they have. Yeah,
and I think they're gonna have Peter Siddle, aren't they, as their overseas. Assuming he's not going to be taking part in the Ashes, which I don't think he will, with James Patterson tearing up stumps and
I think
over in Australia, and then Cameron Delport as well
from Leicestershire,
from Leicestershire on a UK passport. So I think from that point of view, I think the releases and the retirements and stuff haven't necessarily had a massively huge impact on the squad. We'll see how they go. I mean, there's kind of part of me that the romantic in me always wants to see Somerset do well in this division. The fact that they've never won it is pretty mad. I think them signing Jack Brooks is a really good signing. I think he's somebody that's kind of will just add something on those Taunton pitches. I think he's the right kind of seam bowler for that.
Yeah, and Tom Abel recovering his form last year was huge. He was awful in 2017. I think he dropped himself to the seconds at one point, didn't he? And then last year, he averaged over 40. He was picking up wickets as well, which is, handy.
Obviously, young to be given the captaincy though, wasn't he? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you always worry when they. I mean, it's great when they give it to a kid, but every Graham Smith in South Africa, there's many more Tom Abels in the first year that they gave it to him.
Yeah, I mean, he turned 25 at the start of this month. His birthday, as it happens, is the same day as my daughter's. He turned 25 on the 5th. And as you say, he's already captain.
It's mad. It's mad. I mean, it makes me feel a bit, Now I'm into my 40s. I'm sure no one would believe that, with bearing in mind how childish I am. But it's a fact, unfortunately. But it's one of those things as you get older. Always makes me laugh when people go, "Yeah, he's getting on a bit now, isn't he? That cricketer." And you're there going, "Born 6 years after me, guys."
Yeah. Cheers, lads. Calm down, please.
Yeah. But I think they'll do all right, won't they? You would think Leach will be in the wickets again, perhaps even pushing for England selection. I think he's kind of. Do you know what? If it wasn't for the fact that if we didn't have Moeen Ali in our lives, and thank goodness we do, because he brings me so much joy.
Yeah.
But if we didn't, he probably would have played 40 tests by now. Yeah. I think he probably would have been, well, maybe not 40, but maybe 25.
Well, he'd have played all of 2018. Like, as soon as he got in New Zealand, I think he didn't tear up trees, but he did well enough for people to go, actually, no, this guy can play at this level. Everybody else around him's falling apart, and he's just doing what he does every week for Somerset. But as you say, with Moeen there, it's kind of like, it's almost in a very, very poor comparison, a lower level Stuart McGill to Shane Warne, because it's like, Stuart McGill's brilliant. Unfortunately, we've got Shane Warne. It's kind of like,
I'm always going to be Team McGill in that particular scenario. Not in terms of their ability as bowlers, but just because Stuart McGill is a lovely, lovely lad. Just a big fan. But anyway, I kind of see what you mean, and it's the mad thing is, I suppose, is that kind of the one area where England actually have some strength in depth is kind of in spin bowling. If you think they've got Adil Rashid, Moeen Ali, Jack Leach,
possibly Mason Crane again if he covers.
Yeah, Mason Crane. But bearing in mind how the struggles that this England Test team have had in the last little while, because they are a little bit like the little girl with a little curl right in the middle of a forehead, aren't they? if you know what I mean. When they're good, they're very, very good.
Yeah.
And when they're bad, they're shit awful. I don't think that's how that rhyme finishes out, but you know what I mean, don't you?
No,
it's kind of weird. They probably got more strength in depth as far as spinners are concerned now than they have
possibly
any.
Yeah.
I suppose. Well,
possibly for the last 20 years, at least, if not more.
There was Panesar and Swan when they were both performing in 2012, right? When they won that series in India, and then one in Sri Lanka as well. That's probably the point where England's spin bowling was at the best it's been since Derek Underwood, I would have thought. We should be talking about the county championship, but I don't think anybody talks anywhere near enough about the fact that Graham Swan's shoulder became the problem that it did.
Yeah.
And he retired when he did. I would say his loss is probably going to be more difficult to replace than Alistair Cook's, because he was that two bowlers in one. Not that I'm saying Moeen doesn't give balance in a different way, but Swan was just amazing when he was in that England team.
Yeah, I mean, he was an elite level spin bowler, I think, certainly at his peak.
Yeah. Anyway, that's not really County Championship Division 1, is it, Rob?
No, it's not. But I'll tell you who is County Championship Division 1, James Hildreth, who batted at 3 against Cardiff MCCU. So because we talked on Somerset and because we talked about, I say, quote unquote, older players playing for England, although, again, Hildreth is younger than the both of us. if he's going to bat at 3 for Somerset, all of a sudden, if he has another year, which he may bloody well do because he keeps doing it and never gets called up, if he does it again at 3, and again, the same principle, if England is still struggling 1 or 2 tests into the Ashes, do they finally give James Hildreth some consideration?
Be mad, wouldn't it, if they did? Because people have been saying he's too old to play for England for 4 years. Yeah. And then 4 years later, they pick him. There's no reason why he couldn't, and I think he's at least as good an option as anybody else. I mean, he's got, 45, 46 first-class hundreds?
45.
He's got, I think, over 15,000 first-class runs. There's absolutely no reason why he couldn't play at England level and do a decent job. I think he's as likely to succeed as Joe Denley. I would have no issue with him playing. The thing is, I think there isn't really any... The England selection scenario is this weird scenario, right? Where it's basically... There's a whole load of people that if they got in the side, you'd go, yeah, fair enough. But it isn't necessarily anybody who you're like, he has to play.
Right,
and I think that's kind of a bit of a frustration Trevor Bayliss has talked about, isn't it? Is that there's no one that's really there going, I'm banging out 1,700 runs at 85, you need to pick me.
Yeah.
There isn't those players. So if you told me James Hildreth was playing, I'd be like, okay, cool. If you told me Ollie Pope was playing, I'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. If Joe Denley, yeah, fine. But I'm not there thinking... any of those 3 players that I've just named have to be in the England side, right? And I think that's kind of the problem England have.
There isn't a Mike Hussey in England who's just weight of runs year in, year out has made them go, we can't ignore this guy anymore.
Well, I'd probably, you think about, so like kind of the way that like Kevin Peterson made it into the England side. He made it into the one-day side in 2004 and just smashed it in one-day cricket on that tour of Zimbabwe and South Africa. And then by the time it got round to the Ashes, they were there going, well, we have to pick him. We don't have any choice but to pick him because he's a game changer. That's another interesting story is, should Graham Thorpe have played that series? And if he did, would he have played instead of Peterson or Bell? And I kind of think it ended up being framed as Peterson versus Thorpe, where actually I think it was probably Bell versus Thorpe. But, we can have a conversation about the revisionist history of the 2005 Ashes on another occasion, perhaps. But yeah, I think the point stands about how there's just not really anybody who's just where you're there going, well, he has to be picked, either as a batsman or a bowler. And I think that's kind of the concern in terms of how England go about replacing the 3 stalwarts that were still kicking around in this side in Cook, Anderson and Broad, when any of those 3 decide they've had enough. I think the post-Jimmy Anderson world will be a very, very sad one for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Hildreth, pick him, see how he does. He's not going to do any better or any worse than anyone else. But if they didn't pick him, I don't think as I'd be upset as certain members of the Tournament faithful would be.
Sure.
But I wouldn't be devastated if he played.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair. You mentioned Stuart Broad there, so I think that's a good point to segue to Notts, who've flexed their financial muscles, probably to the chagrin of a few smaller sides, but they added Ben Duckett, Ben Slater, Joe Clark, interestingly, and Zach Chappell. I know Clark had been linked with Warwickshire, among others, but obviously he went to Trentbridge in the end. James Pattinson's going to be back. Broad's going to play the first couple of games. Jake Ball's fit again. Luke Fletcher is in the team. No Harry Gurney this year, obviously that high-profile white ball contract, but on paper, Notts surely have to be there or thereabouts among the top teams as well, right?
Yeah, they always are, aren't they? Yeah, I mean, obviously the big signing for Glamorgan was them losing Billy Root. Obviously, that's the huge news. at least it is in this household. But yeah, no, I think they're just a very solid side, aren't they? And they're pretty well run, and they do reasonably well. I mean, it was a big surprise, wasn't it, when they were relegated down to Division 2? They were clearly too good to be in Division 2 when they were in Division 2.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, yeah. I mean, again, Surrey, as we said at the beginning of this podcast, right, Rob? Surrey are going to win it, obviously.
Yeah.
That's done. But you could imagine a very good challenge coming from Nottinghamshire, a very good challenge coming from Essex, and potentially a decent challenge coming from Somerset.
Yeah, no, I agree, 100%.
So, from that point of view, you would expect, if they end up being second or third in the table, I wouldn't be particularly surprised. If they beat Surrey to the Championship this year, I'd be amazed. But if they do, they potentially have the skills to do it.
Yeah, right. And the year they were relegated, even last year, I mean, they basically survived with the skin of their teeth last year because they just seemed a bit fragile with the bat as much as anything. But they've sort of addressed that. They've got Ben Slater to open. Well, that answers one question: who's going to open? Because that's been a bit up and down for as long as I can remember, almost with Nottinghamshire. They've solidified the middle order. Ricky Vessels, who's been such a good one-day player, was also surplus to requirements almost. He's gone to Worcestershire. And then they get James Pattinson back as well, which is just a phenomenal signing, really. The form he's in at the moment in the Sheffield Shield. It's
that video that's going around on social media is just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you've got lads leaving away swingers that just happen to be an absolute rocket of an in-swinger.
Yeah.
There's some. They've still got the kind of the basis of a very strong side.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Mark Foote kicking around in the squad, right?
Yeah, and Luke Wood as well, who's a competent county cricketer, I think. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, because if you can just drop a guy like Luke Wood into your 11, he can bowl, he can bat a bit, he's a decent fielder. That's not, as a squad player, that's handy to have.
and then Paul Coughlin's kicking around as well, and I think he's probably one of the bright sparks for Durham in their darker times.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll be keen to prove something this year because he missed last year through injury. So, he's got a point to prove. So,
yeah, Foote is one of those ones that I always just think should have done more than he did. I tell you what, he's a really underrated cricketer and a lovely lad is Stephen Mullany, who I think, just is just, a very down to earth, very competent county pro who leads his side really well. So, I think there's every chance that they could do all right. I think, they'll have Dan Christian coming in for the 2020s.
Yeah.
And I think Christian's one of those players that I think people know what he can do, but perhaps underrates what he brings to a side. Anyone you can have that can bat in your top four and can give you 3 or 4 overs in 2020 cricket is gold. They're the ones that earn the big money. If you look at, you can see the IPL auction, and I'm sure there's lots of people that are listening to this podcast who are county cricket fanatics that don't like the IPL. I'm in the other camp, I'm afraid. It's bloody brilliant. I love everything about it. It's the guys that get the serious money are the likes of Carlos Brathwaite, Jofra Archer, Ben Stokes, Shakib Al Hassan, etc. The guys who you can say, right, I'm going to bat you in my top 4 and you can give me 3 or 4 overs. Yeah. And that's exactly what Dan Christian is. He's a nice man as well, actually. I won't tell you the ones I don't like. I will tell you the ones I do. He was in Trinidad for the finals of the CPL in 2017 when Trinbago Knight Riders won it. And then there's someone who I think probably in the Nottinghamshire squad that probably should have made more of an impact at an international level at this stage and kicked on from where he was is probably Joe Clark.
Mm.
I saw that year they were in Division 2. Was it 2017? They're in Division.
Yes, yeah, because they came back up last year. Or last year was their first year back in Division 1, shall I say.
Joe Clark scored 100 that year. Brett D'Oliveira scored a double ton against Glamorgan.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing the game, the BBC, and Joe Clark scored 140 odd in that game. They ended up declaring it something like 550 for 3. Obviously, by the time rain ruined the rest of the game, Glamorgan were 45 for 4. Obviously, just goes without saying, doesn't it? I think actually that may have been that. Yeah, that was the Worcestershire game. Yeah. So I was getting confused with another game where
Glamorgan were 45 for 4.
Yeah, another game where Glamorgan were 45 for 4. I think I did. I remember I was looking through an old notebook and I found a thing where like one season Glamorgan's average score when their 5th wicket spell was like 108. Bless them. God, I love them. I really do wish they did better. Again, that's a Division 2 conversation. But I honestly think he should be kicking on. He's still he's 21, 22. He's still only a kid. So from that point of view, I could see him kicking on. Yeah, they're a really strong side. You know, I don't think there's a bad team. The only team kind of looking at through the squads where you think, do you know where they might struggle is probably Kent, having come up last year, right? They came up last year, didn't they?
They did, yeah, with Warwickshire.
Yeah. So I just think they're kind of a little bit where Worcestershire were a couple of years back, where they're too good for Division 2 but not really good enough for Division 1. I suspect is what will happen. Warwickshire are very much in that space. I mean, Warwickshire just absolutely dicked over everybody last year with Ian Bell scoring the runs he did. I wouldn't mind if Ian Bell played for England again, you know? Talking about Warwickshire.
Yeah, well, let's because I feel like Yorkshire are just kind of in the middle. I think they're good enough to stay up. I don't think they're good enough to mount a serious title challenge with, you know, guys like Root and Bairstow away. Dwayne Olivier's a great signing. They've lost Plunkett and Brooks, as we mentioned. Balance is dependable. Tom Kohler-Cadmore dependable live. I like the look of Tattersall behind the stumps. I just feel like they're in the middle, though. They're kind of like, yep, we'll be fine. We'll be 5th and safe and roll on next year. But then after that, it's like the relegation, because it's an 8-team league, the relegation picture is slightly, maybe even muddier, because Hampshire picked up Aidan Markram today as their overseas player. So you mentioned Warwickshire. Obviously, Bell's going to miss 3 months following toe surgery. But they've got Sibley, Hayne, Will Rhodes. You know, they can score runs. I'm just not sure who takes the wickets for them if Ollie Stone's not fit. And, you know, it puts a lot on... Jitan Patel's reliable, but who's the other young lad at Warwickshire, Seamer, whose name escapes me right now? Oh, God.
Ben Code?
No, Code's Yorkshire. I'll remember it in a minute.
Sorry, I thought we were still talking about Yorkshire.
Sorry, no. not Ollie Stone. Brooks. Harry Brooks.
Harry Brooks.
Yeah, so I don't know with Warwickshire if they can take enough wickets, whereas Hampshire is almost the opposite problem. I didn't know if they'd score enough runs, though Markram may help on that front.
Oh, yeah, Markram's great. You know, how much he'll be around? I suspect he'll be in the World Cup squad, right? For South Africa.
Yeah, I think, but then conversely, if he plays, they now all of a sudden saying that Karunaratne might actually then come in, even though he can't play for Hampshire because of international commitments with Sri Lanka, but now there's a rumour that he might come back because he might not play in the World Cup or become available during the World Cup period again. Oh, it's so bizarre. Whole thing is weird.
It's I think it's kind of weird, isn't it? Like the whole overseas player. Like when I was a kid watching cricket all the way back in the dark days of the 1990s, you would have a guy that would sign as your overseas and he'd be with you all year, yeah? And county cricket was always hugely benefiting from the fact that England kind of had, from an international point of view, basically April through to August, where there wasn't international cricket, there wasn't other leagues, etc., etc. Now, with the proliferation of 2020 leagues, the proliferation of the international calendar, whereby people are trying to find ways to just fit games in. You know, now before, like in the past, the West Indies would have been playing their cricket in February, March and April, and now they'll have international cricket in July, August and September.
Yeah.
Australia will have, they'll be playing internationals potentially in September and October now. Those days are gone, aren't they? And I think counties have kind of been quite clever in that regard and just kind of bring these guys in for where they can. There was a time, wasn't there, where you would see teams specifically going for recently retired guys who they could pick up for a whole year. Like Surrey went for Graham Smith, but his knees gave out, right?
Yeah.
I think it was his knees.
Yeah.
They had Rick Ponting, didn't they, in a similar circumstance. Then they went for Sangakkara. They kind of were of the opinion that they'd rather have an old head who was going to be around for the whole season, rather than going for the guy who's going to be with you for whatever and then disappear again. Yeah, they kind of got the same thing, haven't they, with Dean Elgar this year, actually, sorry. That he'll probably end up being around for the whole thing. Whereas last year, I mean, they had De Bruyne and they had Maddinson.
Yeah, and then did and didn't have Coley and Elgar's here from the end of April, presumably for the rest of the year. So for Surrey, that is. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I think he'll do very well. He's a very, very solid player. But now Hampshire have added, of course, my mate Anaya and Donald, #Young Nye. So I'm really keen to see how he'll do. Obviously, as someone who holds Glamorgan very close in their heart, it was sad to see him leaving the club. But I think for him, it's probably a good thing. I think being away from being the great Welsh hope will hopefully be good for him. But I don't think he's necessarily an automatic selection in that team. He's going to have to fight real hard.
I mean, he had he played four championship games for Glamorgan last year, and he averaged 11. So
he's like, when he's good, like he scored the joint fastest double 100 at Win Bay, right? He was hilarious when he was talking about it. Right? Like, I was like, oh, that was good. And he was like, yeah, went well. But I think he's kind of still trying to find his way. So the talent's very obvious. But what I think happens is with these young guys, if you kind of look at the young guys in county cricket, they'll come in when they're 19 or 20 and they'll do really, really well. And then their second season, they tend to get found out a little bit.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Quite a big drop off in terms of how well they do. And then they kind of need to rebuild to okay, now I need to work out how I score runs consistently at that level. It's quite unusual for a kid to come in at 19, bash out runs and just keep going at that level. You need to be a Joe Root for that to happen. Or a Virat Kohli or someone who's that level of good. So from that point of view, I think it'll be an interesting couple of years for him, and I think he'll have to fight quite hard to get in the side. But I'm very, very keen to see how the lad does because I'm a big fan. He's a good kid.
Yeah, and I think there is an opportunity in. As I said, I don't necessarily know who Hampshire. I mean, James Vince is the obvious answer, though he's potentially opening because England are interested in the idea of James Vince as an opener to go around that merry-go-round again. But beyond Vince...
that's a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Yeah. But, the concern of it, whether England pursue Vince as an opener or not, Hampshire do have an opening at the top of the order because Adams retired. So Vince moving up fills that need, but also they've somehow got to replace the runs that Jimmy Adams has brought them on a regular basis for years and years and years. They were...
Well, and Sean Irvine's gone as well, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So...
Markham will help, obviously, but...
Yeah, but that's two huge parts that have been such a big part of their order. Keith Barker's an interesting signing from Warwickshire,
Yeah, I like him. I really like him as a cricketer. But I see him more as a bowler who can bat, so a bowling acquisition with a batting upside. But I think that's their get out of jail card for Hampshire, is that bowling attack. You've added Barker and James Fuller to Abbott, Fidel Edwards and Liam Dawson, and maybe Mason Crane if he's healthy. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good county bowling lineup.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, like I said, I don't think there's necessarily, other than Kent and maybe Warwickshire, they're kind of the two that I suspect would struggle. And then Surrey are the clear front runners. But if you were to ask me who was going to finish in those middle five positions out of the other five teams in that championship, I think I'd struggle. They're all they're all pretty good. And I think one of the good things, and as much as it's been maligned a little bit, in terms of, I don't know, it's funny, isn't it? It's the way that the solutions that people come up with to fix a problem then become a problem. And I think it's one of the things I love most about the existential crisis that cricket has, and it always has one, right?
Yeah.
At the moment, I reckon probably Test cricket is more open and more exciting than it's literally been in any time I've watched it, right?
Yep.
And one-day cricket is more exciting and more innovative than at any point when I've watched it in my entire life.
Definitely.
And for some reason, cricket fans have turned both of those things into problems.
True. Yeah.
Which is mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, we've got this, we're going on, our bats dominating ball, it's absolutely destroying the sport. And then all of a sudden, the ball comes back into the game and you see really tight test matches and batting collapses. Oh, batting's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
The game's ruined. And you're like, hang on a second. And then with one-day cricket's boring. It's 240, boring middle overs. That goes, you find teams scoring nearly 500. Oh, it's boring watching amazing cricketers smash sixes. Are you having a laugh?
Yeah.
Come on now. And, if it was every game a team was pushing for nearly 500, right? I'm saying this with a big maybe that would be a problem. Right? There's an ODI today where 270 was the pass score.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, but the Aussies got 277 and Pakistan got 271. So it's not like that's a good game in my mind. Like,
yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with that game.
Yeah.
I mean, in an ideal world, you switch around in ODI cricket by playing on a Vipers pit or a road, right? That's kind of the two ideal scenarios. But what makes me laugh is that people say low-scoring games are sometimes the most entertaining, which is just patently false. Because you'll have a game where it's like a team scores 190 and then the other team gets to 185 off 47 overs. And it was never really in doubt that they were going to get there. But they didn't absolutely race to their target. They just took their time. And that's not fun. That's not great. Whereas, when it's 450 plays 440, it's great. Just enjoy it. Don't spend all of your time talking about how the sport's dying. Just enjoy what's being put in front of you. There we are.
To encapsulate that, England in the West Indies, the Test series and the one-dayers, it kind of gave you a bit of everything in a way, from individual performances like, Mark Woods, and, in the one-dayers, there was those two massive scores, and the next game was a complete fucking shit show, from a batting point of view. You got a bit of everything, and why is that?
It was amazing, and there was some bad cricket in it, but I reckon in terms of entertainment rather than quality, that's one of the best Test series I've seen in a long time. I'm really lucky that I work at home most of the time, which just means I can just have the cricket on while I'm working. Right, there's no one else to upset in my little office.
Yeah.
But I just had that on. It was just fascinating. I just watched all of it, and it was great, and it probably wasn't the result that England fans wanted. I suppose both lucky and unlucky in that I spend enough time in cricket nowadays that who wins and who loses is less important to me than it was. I think the last time I remember being upset at a cricket result was probably the 13-14 Ashes.
Yeah.
Since then, I've kind of been like, nah, some you win, some you lose. But to go back to my original point, and before I went off on a tangent about the rest of it, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, I finished my fourth beer now, so you'll have to forgive me. The two-division structure was seen as the saviour of cricket, right?
Yeah.
The cream will rise to the top. You'll have relegation and promotion. And there was times before two divisions came in what was it, 2000 it started, I think, or 2001, where you would have a team, your county would be playing, and they're going to finish 12th. Yeah?
Yeah.
And everyone knows they're going to finish 12th. And what does it matter? Because everyone plays each other home and away. Now, I think that in my mind, the one mistake they made in that was that when they went down to two divisions, they didn't reduce the amount of cricket. And I think probably what you could have done is you have two divisions, but you keep the same, you play 1 year home, 1 year away, and you still only have 8 to 10 first-class games a year, which I think is probably enough. I think 16's too many, or 14. But that's an argument for another time, right? And I'm sure
that may be what we get next year.
And there's every chance.
Yeah.
Again, but now, brilliantly, the two division thing's become a problem, hasn't it? Having been the solution nearly 20 years ago, now people are talking about, regional leagues and then going back to one big thing and all the rest of it. And it's like, I find that just really fascinating, that if you spend enough time watching cricket, you'll find that the solution become the problem, become the solution, become the problem.
Yeah. No, that's, yeah.
I think it says a lot about the psyche of a cricket fan, like I said, who seem to want to find an existential crisis for their sport to be in, when I actually think cricket's probably stronger now as a product. And I know cricket fans don't like people talking about a product, but it's a business.
It is.
And it needs to make money.
Yeah.
As a product, I think it's probably stronger than it's ever been. I think ODIs are better than they've ever been. Tests are better than they've been in 25 years. And 2020, if you don't like 2020, then you're not really a cricket fan in my mind. It's bloody brilliant. And what's great about 2020? What's great about 2020? And it took me a while. I didn't used to think this. So maybe 10 years ago, I had the opposite view. But that was probably because I just didn't really watch it. But if I had limited time to watch cricket, and if I had time to watch cricket, I'd watch test matches, right?
Yeah.
But now I have more time to watch it. And what I think is great about 2020, and this is why it's perfect, is because it's close enough to cricket to keep cricket fans happy, but far enough away to interest those that don't really like cricket.
Yeah.
And that's why it's been so successful. Although, here's a story for you, Rob. I'm not sure I've ever told this story on a podcast, so here we go. I was at the CPL in 2017. My family came to see me in St. Lucia, and I organised or access all areas passes for all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
They could come along. They went in a corporate box. They were staying in the same hotel as the players. They met Chris Gale, Kane Williamson, Kieran Pollard. Yeah, just everything that a cricket fan could ever possibly hope for.
Yeah.
Beachside Hotel in St. Lucia, meeting the cricketers, corporate box,
Lovely.
access all areas passes. Yeah, sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Said to my daughter, would you go again? Nah, it's all right, thanks, for me. Right? And I've come to the conclusion that if that isn't enough to sell her cricket,
yeah,
then I think she's lost, isn't she? Really,
Yeah.
I don't think we're ever going to win her over, to be honest, mate. But it's great. Cricket's great. Sorry, I'm still going on about how cricket's brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
It's probably helpful on a cricket podcast to like cricket. It's probably
It's just one thing. I hope for all the people I've upset with the things I've written and the things I've done, one of the things people realise is that I really do love cricket. And even now, even after like 8 years of like kind of turning into a job, I still bloody love it. It's brilliant. It's great. It is a man hitting a ball with a stick, but it is pretty cool.
Yeah, but all sport is nonsense, and the sooner we all accept that, I think the more fun we have with it. And I had that with hockey and cricket and whatever else. It's just like, yeah, this is nonsense that we have created as a society to pass the time and give ourselves some sort of joy and just treat it as such. Some people take it far too seriously. Far too seriously.
I don't. It's not. I had to quote the great cricket philosopher Daniel Libke. Funny cricket is better than good cricket, and it always will be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But bad teams are more fun to watch in any sport than good teams because mistakes and stupidity are much more entertaining.
Yes, I would agree.
So as we sort of meandered slightly off, I think in terms of...
You've got me on a podcast, Rob. You were always going to go on a tangent.
I know.
There's no way you weren't.
Jeez. I can't remember. I think the first time you came on the podcast was to talk about 28 days data, and I think we talked about that for about 5 minutes out of a 45-minute show, and then it's just like. But
I kind of hope any podcast anyone's ever listened to me with has made them realise how much of a pain in the arse I'd be to go for a pint with.
So, Surrey champions, I think we're in agreement there. Kent down, I think we're in agreement there. In between, Essex and Notts will probably be good. Probably Somerset. Fuck knows with the rest. We could have done this the last 45 minutes we could have done in no time. Right? You see, that again, the great Dan Libke's got the idea, 6-minute podcasts. That's brilliant. I love that.
In all seriousness, have you read his book?
I haven't yet, no. I need to. I've got a list of books of different things that I want to eventually buy, but every time I mention it, my wife just looks at me and doesn't even say anything anymore because there's just a stack of other books I've bought and haven't read. So it's kind of like I need to get the pile down before I can add new things on the top, but that is on the list.
Buy ebooks and then she never needs to know, right? It's called the Instant Cricket Library, right? And it genuinely, it's like him. It could have been terrible, but the way he's done it, like I read it on a plane, and it was a long flight, and I actually had a PDF reading it on my computer, and I was just giggling away like a loon reading it. There's one story called The Bannerman, which is like a cartoon. It's just, I buy it. It's just great. It's just awesome. It's just a joyful thing to read. It's just brilliantly silly. People should get it.